Today we're going to talk about all things revolving around being a flight nurse and a flight paramedic. In my last video, I did kind of like a get ready for me as I get on shift, and I had a lot of questions about why I got into this career and how to get into this career, and I want to cover them all in one video for you guys. So hi, if you don't know me, my name's Shay. I'm a flight nurse and I'm a paramedic as well. I've worked in the hospital, I've worked on the ambulance, and I've flown in a helicopter for 8 years. I've done multiple different flight interviews, so I have a vast experience of what programs are looking for when you go to interview, and I've been flying long enough that I have a pretty good idea of tips to give you guys to get into this career. So number one common question that I get, where should I start? If you are not in the medical field at all, I always recommend you start by getting your EMT, because you can either bridge to being a paramedic or you can work as an EMT through nursing school. The down and dirty is that nurses will ultimately make more money in this career field. When I started, I was making almost $10 more than my paramedic counterpart, and I still probably have the same pay gap. Now, in the helicopter, the flight nurse and the flight paramedic have the same scope of practice typically at most programs in the US. Now, why do we fly a flight nurse and a flight paramedic? Because the flight nurse comes with good hospital experience. It's that stabilization in the ER, the hemodynamics in the ICU. They're used to invasive monitoring. They're used to hanging vasopressors. They're used to all different types of pharmacology and the procedures that you see in the hospital. Whereas paramedics are used to being on the street. They're being the first ones to respond to an emergency. They have really good airway management. They're good with scene operations. So you put the two of them together and it should make a dream team that no matter what they see when they walk into the hospital or a scene, they have a good idea of how to handle it. Now, after a while, you start to do the same job and eventually you learn each other's roles and they become synonymous with each other. Where I work, in every program I've ever worked at, the flight nurse and the flight paramedic have had the same scope. However, the flight nurse has always made more money. Because of that, I always recommend that if you know you want to get into this career, you should go the nursing route. However, there are lots of paramedics that bridge to nursing and nurses that bridge to becoming a paramedic. Certain states require different certification or licensure to be on board. So sometimes it's a nurse-led state, sometimes it's a paramedic-led state. And if you want to float around or work within different bases within your organization that are in different states, a lot of times it helps to have both licenses. That way you can pick up either shift. So working as an EMT through nursing school is always one of my biggest recommendations. If you go the paramedic route first, that's fine. Either way, as a nurse or a paramedic, you will need 3 to 5 years of critical care experience or busy 911 EMS experience. After nursing school, I always recommend you get into an ICU. ICU experience as a flight nurse is seriously invaluable. Work for a while in the ICU, and then I recommend that you work part-time or switch to the ER. Having both ICU and ER experience is going to be the most helpful thing to round out your experience, in my opinion. So you'll have operations as an EMT, ICU experience, ER experience. Short of actually working as a paramedic on the truck, to me, this is the best experience you can come in with as a nurse. On the paramedic side, working in a busy 911 system, managing airways, managing critical calls and critical patients, that's going to be the most helpful thing for you. A lot of paramedics don't bridge to nursing until after they've flown for a little bit. However, if you have both, even better. Things that they're going to look for. All of your AHA cards, ACLS, PALS, BLS, usually there's a trauma cert required from the nursing or the paramedic side. Could be PHTLS, TNCC, any type of pre-hospital trauma course usually is applicable. The CFRN and the FPC, those are both your board certified tests for being a flight nurse or a flight paramedic. Some companies require them on the front end and some companies require them on the back end after a certain amount of time. Coming in with your cert just proves to the company that you're applying to that you've already passed the test and they don't need to worry about you being a liability. It is a hard test to study for, and I will link some good resources that I have for you in this video. Those tests are full of a lot of critical care, a lot of flight physiology, and a lot of transport considerations. If you want to know what's on the test, you can actually go and look up a breakdown of what each section has involved, but there's so many really good study guides that you can look at also. Other things that they may require to have, neonatal resuscitation, that's usually one that they will help you get after you get hired. But if you come in with it, even better. Some states do require that the nurse is also an EMT. Not every state, but it's definitely something to look into. If you can come in already having your EMT, again, it's really helpful. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the program that I fly for. So I work at a base that has a helicopter and an airplane. The helicopter is an AW-119 and it's pictured here flying away on a flight.
And the aircraft we fly in is a PC-12. I can't say enough good things about the program that I fly for. It has an awesome safety culture, we have robust protocols, and it's a really good work environment with awesome clinicians that fly here. We do all types of calls here, from scene ECMO to flying cardiac arrest to cannulation sites to regular traumas and medical scene calls and facility transfers. Every invasive device you can think of, Impellas, ECMO, balloon pump, we do it all here, which is really cool and challenging. We service every age population from babies to adults. We have a specialty NICU team as well. Here we are on the pad enjoying the sunset. So yeah, this program is just super fantastic. Our fixed wing operations take us farther away when there's long distance flights, or when there's too many devices to fit in the helicopter, we will take the fixed wing.
So why did I want to be a flight nurse? Well, admittedly, I grew up in a very conservative home, and education was not always pushed to the forefront, but something in me told me that I needed to go to college and work in emergency care. It just felt like a calling in high school. And in my senior year, we had to do mock interviews, and I pulled a paramedic for mine. And a real paramedic came in and interviewed me as if he was hiring me to be a paramedic at his agency. And by the end of it, I actually wanted to be one. He inspired me. He was actually the husband of my 8th grade science teacher, and they invited me over for dinner so I could talk more about what a career in paramedicine could look like. And that's what inspired me to go to college. Eventually, I got my nursing degree, I got my paramedic's license. I have worked in critical care, as I told you guys, worked in an ambulance, and then I started flying after 3 years because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I'd always had this fear of blood and guts, and in my brain I was like, I think the only way to conquer it is if I work in it, and that's what I did. Pros and cons of this career. For one, I love the schedule. A lot of agencies do 312s, some do all 24s, some do 48s, even though I don't recommend that because I think fatigue becomes a big risk in a 48-hour system, especially if it's a busy base. And I like the lifestyle balance. I can work my stretch at work and then I could have a week off and I haven't taken any PTO. So for me, that work-life balance is really important. Some people don't like to be away from their families for even one night, and they don't like the 24. So you have to decide what works well for you and for your family as well. Other pros, this is the only field of nursing where as an RN you have this much autonomy. There is nowhere else where nurses are doing surgical crikes, intubating, putting in chest tubes, giving meds without an order. That's a privilege that you get to have as an RN in flight because you are trained and covered by your medical director, just like your flight paramedic counterpart. And that's really cool. That is really neat.
I want to take a moment to shout out my program. We carry whole blood, we have ultrasound, we have finger thoracostomy, we have an EPOC so that we can draw lab values. We carry all the invasive stuff. We carry a list of amazing medications. Here's our ultrasound. And we have a robust training program that keeps us proficient in all these things. And a good program, if you work for them, will have a good training program. We carry 2 bags primarily when we go into a flight. We have our main bag, which you can see here, where we keep our IO, ultrasound, first-in medications, IV start kits, pelvic binders, pericardiocentesis kit, finger thoracostomy kit, all the stuff you could need immediately on a flight. And then we have an airway bag, which has our pediatric and adult airway supplies all in one place. And on every flight, both of these bags come in with us. Our training, we do multiple sims a year every quarter, and we do a cadaver lab every year. So our company makes sure that we stay very proficient, and they give us a lot of freedom because of it.
Some of the cons are you will be getting out of bed at 3 a.m. for a call, and you have to decide if that's going to get old. Other cons are that even though you make more than your partner as a nurse, you are probably still taking a pay cut based on what you'd be making in the hospital to flying. Even now where I work, I make almost $10 less an hour than I would working in a hospital in the city. So you have to decide if the time off between calls and the freedom with your schedule and doing a really cool job is worth the pay cut for you. This is a job that has a ton of responsibility. You and your partner are going to people's worst emergencies, and a lot of times the people who are calling you are looking to you like you are going to have the magic thing that can save this patient. And you're going to do the best you can to do that, and you're going to use all of your tools and your resources, but a lot of times they're going to look at you and say, okay, here you go, and they're going to have you manage the emergency, and that's a big responsibility. What I've noticed is a lot of people want to know the fastest way to get into flight, and I don't ever recommend that because you want to be the type of provider that your patient deserves when you get on scene, and that can only come with you getting really good experience before, because this is not an entry-level job in any way. You have to come in with a really solid foundation and then learn the things that you couldn't or didn't learn before after you start flying. Now, that's not to worry that if you don't know everything, you won't be competent in this job. Most programs do a really good job of training you in what you need to know after you're hired, learning their guidelines and protocols, learning their equipment, and usually a really robust orientation process so that you feel comfortable when you get released from orientation. Other important things to consider is that not all flight programs are created equal. And it's important that you look at the safety record of each program and how they handle their flights, how they handle if you were to turn down a flight. At the end of the day, you and your crew coming home is the most important thing, and it is never worth risking your life to fly a mission that's not safe. So definitely ask about safety, ask about weather standards, ask about the culture. If you were to turn a flight down, would you get questioned on it? And you're probably not going to get it from their admin. Probably need to ask those questions to current people who work at the company. Helicopter EMS is a very, very small community for as many services as there are in the country. And most people are probably removed by one person. So it's definitely worth asking your peers and getting a good grip for what's a good fit for your personality, for your safety standards, and for what kind of care you want to give to your patients. Now, if you're wanting to tackle the flight interview, I do have like a whole separate class that I've made on this. What I will say is that it varies greatly depending on what company you're applying for. What is typical or some things you could or should expect are that you will take a very hard critical care test at the beginning of the interview. If you're studying for your CFRN or your FPC, that will really help you when you go to take this test. It's everything from like intense cardiology to airway management, EKGs, and different equations for certain like physiologic issues in the body. There's a lot of in-depth studying you could do for that type of test, but usually that's not like a pass-fail. They're just trying to gauge where they think you are in your knowledge. A lot of times there'll be panel interviews where you sit and answer the typical questions about, tell me when a time you didn't agree with your partner was. Maybe they want to ask you something off the wall, like how do you make a PB&J sandwich? They can literally ask you anything in these panel interviews. Mostly they're trying to get a feel for who you are and for how you handle questions that you maybe aren't even prepared for. At the end of the day, when you put their flight suit on and you wear their logo, you are representing their company. And then lastly, it's very common that you will do a sim. Something medical, something trauma, or something adult, and something pediatric. They want to see how you'll handle an RSI. And even as a nurse, they're going to expect you to be able to name the meds that you want, the dosages, and how you would handle intubation. That's a really good thing to practice if you have a paramedic friend. As a nurse, they won't expect you to be perfect, but they want to see how you work through problems. So that's pretty much my down and dirty to introduction to becoming a flight nurse or a flight paramedic. I tried to answer the most common questions that I get asked. As always, feel free to ask more. My normal content is over on TikTok, and I'm just getting more into long form content because I really enjoy it. I do have another YouTube channel called The Crew Table where we go and we film with different programs and highlight them to their communities and have them cook a meal with us, which is cool. But this is the first time that I'm really filming more of my personal life. And after some of the comments I got in my last YouTube, I just want to remind you that I am a real human and I have a very low tolerance when it comes to questioning professionalism, especially as a woman in EMS. I'm a huge advocate for equal respect for men and for women, and comments about how I get ready or comments about how much makeup I wear, if I do my hair, they're just super outdated, guys. I understand it's a public platform and you can take the time to comment what you want, but I do have a low threshold for that. I like this to be a safe place, and my company gives me the privilege of posting in their uniform. So anything that just doesn't align with professionalism, I'm probably going to delete or get rid of. That's just a personal boundary that I have as I post more long form content. But I really do appreciate you guys watching, asking questions, which as long as you ask respectfully, you can pretty much ask whatever you want. This is why I'm making these longer videos so that we can get a chance to chat more and do more educational stuff. But yeah, just remember, I'm a real human, and the people whose comments that you put on other videos are real humans too. So anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go. Let's go.